everyone, this is Farha of Group 316 and the topic is vision. Vision is arguably our most important sense. Certainly, a complete loss of vision would have the most profound effect on the lifestyle of the average person. The study of vision does not normally fall within the remit of the medical physicist. All large hospitals have ophthalmology departments devoted to this particular science. He or she might nevertheless be involved in research in this sphere, often together with an ophthalmic colleague. The study of light and particularly of lasers and their applications is part of the role of the medical physicist. Physical light, physics of the light. The nature of light itself is much more difficult to understand than that of sound. Newton in 17th century was convinced that light was comprised of tiny massless particles, whereas Huygens, working at the same time, argued that it must be a wave of some sort. We know we now know that light exhibits properties of both particulate and wave motion, but it was not until the beginning of the 19th century that the wave properties of light were finally established. The major problem then was that we could only understand vibration which when a mechanical medium was available to vibrate. It was known that light propagated through space and that therefore, unlike sound, no current mechanical theory could describe its motion. Maxwell derived the mathematical theories of electromagnetic waves and demonstrated that light exhibited the properties expected of electromagnetic radiation. We use electromagnetic radiation over this whole spectrum in various applications of medical physics, and many of them are covered in other chapters. Visible light occupies only a narrow band from about 400 to 700 nanometers. The speed of light. The speed at which light travels in a vacuum is approximately 3 into 108 meter per second. Its speed in a transparent medium is always less than this, and the ratio of speed in vacuum to that in the medium is known as its index of refraction. Index of refraction is equals to speed of light in vacuum by speed of light in medium. Refraction and reflection at a boundary. When light travels from one medium into another, its frequency cannot change, but its velocity must. The wavelength changes to accommodate the change in velocity. At a fixed frequency, wavelength is proportional to speed, and therefore the ratio of the wavelength in vacuum to the wavelength in a medium is also equal to the index of refraction. If the light meets a boundary at an oblique angle, then its direction must change if the wavelength is to change by the appropriate factor. The angle through which the light is refracted can be calculated from single geometry, and the relationship between the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction is determined by Snell's law. In this picture, we can see the incident light and the refracted light. If the index of refraction of the material of a thin lens is n2 and that of the surrounding medium is n1, the focal length f of the lens is given by 1 by f is equals to n2 minus n1 by n1 into 1 by Ra minus 1 by Rb, where Ra is the radius of the curvature of the first surface of the lens and the Rb is that of the second surface. From the same side of the lens, this equation is known as the lens maker's equation. Anatomy and physiology of the eye. The human eye is approximately spherical in shape, and its main features with respect to the lens sense of vision are cornea, the iris, the lens, and the retina. The first three all focusing and filtering devices that serve to present a sharp image to the retina. In common with the components of the outer and the middle ears, their function might be regarded as essentially mechanical if such a description can be applied to a process involving light. The transduction of the light energy into electrical energy is the function of the photoreceptors in the retina. A cross section through the human eye. Following anatomical description of the eye is based on that of Mary 1991, although errors are our own. The basic structure of the eye is much like that of a football. The wall of the eyeball consists of three layers called tunics. Only interruption of these tunics is in the posterior portion where the optic nerves enter the eye. The outermost layer is a fibrous tunic composed of dense connective tissue. Its two components are the cornea and the sclera. The cornea at the front of the eye has its collagen fibers regularly arranged and it is transparent. It is curved and represents the first of the focusing components of the eye. It does not contain blood vessels and can therefore be transplanted with relatively little risk of rejection. It does not contain nerve fibers and is sensitive to irritation. The sclera or white of the eye is a tough, opaque sheet to which the muscles of the eye are connected. The next layer is the vascular tunic called the via. Its three components are the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris. The choroid contains a large number of small blood vessels supplying the other tunics as well as itself. It also contains pigments that help to prevent reflection of light within the eye, which would tend to blur the images registered. The ciliary body contains the muscles that support and focus on the lens. Also, the capillaries that secrete fluid into the anterior segment of the eyeball. The iris is the characteristically colored part of the eye. Musculature is constructed to allow a change in the diameter from about 1.5 to 8 mm of the central aperture. The pupil thus controlling the amount of light that can enter the posterior segment. Circumferentially oriented muscles contract the pupil and radially oriented ones expand it. This is the picture of eye. The innermost layer is the retina, which itself consists of two layers, the outer single cell layer of pigmented cells and an inner neural layer containing the photoreceptors. Former reduces the reflection and the latter is primary transducer of the visual system. We shall explore the nature of photoreceptors. Much of the processing of the image is performed locally by the neurons within the retina. This is not generally true of the other complex receptors, which simply transmit information to the brain for analysis. For this reason, the retina is sometimes considered to be a remote outpost of the brain. There is an area where the optical nerve enters the eyeball that has no photoreceptors, creating a blind spot in our field of vision. Adjacent to this is an area of about 2 mm called the macula lutea, over which the retina is relatively thin. Within the macula lutea is the fovea centralis, a pit-like depression the size of the pin head. The fovea is the optical axis of the lens and is the site of our best visual. Two chambers of the eye, the anterior and the posterior segments, are filled with fluid. The anterior segment is filled with an aqueous humor, a clear plasma-like fluid that is continually drained and replenished. The pressure within the anterior segment is maintained at about 16 mmHg. Posterior segment is filled with vitreous humor, a clear viscous gel that is not replenished. The lens is the component that does the final fine focusing of the incident light onto the retina. It is a biconvex but not symmetrically, so its general shape and it particularly the curvatures of the surface can be changed by the action of the ciliary muscles, thus providing a variable focus capability. The media within which the lens is contained have similar insights of refraction to the lens itself, and its effective index of refraction is only about 1.07. For this reason, the most of the focusing is done at the cornea, at the external air interface. As we get older, the lens loses its flexibility and is not able to adapt the higher curvatures. The result is that we have difficulty in focusing on the objects that are close to the eyes. We might need reading glasses. This loss of accommodation of a lens is called presbyopia. The second deterioration mechanism that affects the lens, again often associated with age, is a loss of clarity. Clouded or opaque spots within the lens are called cataracts. In extreme cases, the lens might be surgically excised and replaced, possibly with a prosthetic component. Thank you for listening. Hope you understood.